Hey everyone, it's Brad and Josh here, and we welcome you to We'll Bring the Popcorn, the ultimate film and TV podcast.
So now I want to move us into our TV review of the week. We have episodes 4 through 6 of Alien Earth, where we kind of left off here. And we're going to have heavy spoilers as we move in to discuss this, obviously, because several episodes to talk about, a lot of plot points, a lot of spoilers. So just to dive right in, where we left off with episode 3, you start with Wendy coming to the realization that she may be able to communicate with these alien creatures, and you kind of leave very ambiguously like what's going to happen to her. Well, we jump right in with episode 4 of her just kind of waking up and sees that the doctors are running tests on her. We're trying to figure out what the heck is going on. Why can she communicate? And it kind of really just jumps off from there because she feels like she's been chosen by the aliens to communicate with them and was given this ability. And then you have just this moral discussion of, do you go back and kind of reprogram her basically to not remember how to do it? And, you get Boyd just kind of jumping in and saying, no, leave it, let her be able to, communicate with them. And we want to see where this leads. And
he doesn't care.
It really just jumps off, and we're really in what I feel like is full swing on this story now, where it's found its voice, and now we're full speed ahead to what is really an exciting next 3 episodes, because, man, they do a lot of world building in 1 through 3, but here we really take off, and it gets action heavy and drama, and it gets a lot of stuff thrown at us here in these next couple episodes that I'm really excited for the direction of the show.
Yeah, these 3 are really meaty because you're getting into more of the deeper stuff. You've got Wendy questioning kind of her existence and who she is through these 3, and also she's getting the connection to the xenomorphs where she can, communicate with these alien creatures, and you have Boyd still showing that he doesn't really care about the lives of anyone or anything. It's about what they can do for them. Like, if you're not, helpful for him anymore, you're gone. You don't need to be here. And you also get, his back and forth with Yutani, because, of course, these specimens were their property from the ship that crashed and everything. But, yeah, 4 really gets us going through that. We're seeing all the experiments that they're doing. But we also get into, which, especially by the end of 6, we see as a big story point here, is that, we know that Morrow had slipped a little communication device on Slightly, has been talking to him, trying to befriend him. But we also get the turning point here where Morrow's kind of done playing games with him. So, Morrow ends up taking his family hostage, and the family learns that he's alive. And he's like, all right, I want you to get me one of these eggs. Like, I can't get in the lab. Like, I can't do this. He's, Slightly is a very nervous adult kid. Like, remember, the Lost Boys are kid minds inside of adult bodies. So they're still struggling with, am I a kid? Am I an adult? How do I do these kind of adult things? And, Morrow just had enough to where he's like, all right, if you don't want your family to die, you need to get me one of those eggs. Or how do I get one of them out? Then he brings up the idea of like, well, bring a human in with you and just let one of the alien creatures latch on. And it'll be okay for them and everything, but that's how you'll get them out. And Slightly really struggles through like episodes 4 and 6 and exactly, do I do this? How do I do it? Why do I do it? Can I do it? But we also learn that Kirsch is aware of it all. He's sitting there listening. He's watching. He knows what's happening. And we get a really interesting dynamic that happens because of that. Because, again, Kirsch is a synth, but he's not like the Lost Boys. He's more machine than he is human, because the Lost Boys have their human brain to it, while Kirsch really doesn't. So you get that different aspect of the sense with him, because he's kind of emotionless and he's looking at things in a much different way than the Lost Boys do.
Timothy Olyphant is so good at playing a villain, is so good at playing a bad guy in this. You don't know what his motives directly are yet, or what he's got going on, but he is kind of overseeing everything, and he's very practical, obviously, like synthetic cyborg kind of like hybrid or whatever. And there's some funny interactions with like, when you get to like episode 6 where him and Morrow wind up in the elevator together and just have a little trash talking back and forth between the two of them. And it was
lightly
kind of fun
threaten each other.
Yeah, it was kind of fun seeing that. Like, you go through so much stuff in these 3 episodes. Like, it's crazy because you have, like you said, you have this storyline with Slightly trying to keep his family, his real family, alive. And, is it going to come at the expense of the family he's got now with the Lost Boys? And, who's he willing to sacrifice to get this done? Is he willing to sacrifice somebody? And it weighs very heavily on him for sure in these episodes. And, you get, Morrow with what he's going through, trying to, take care of his kid, and do what Yutani needs him to do so he can take care of it and all that. He's got his own motives, but then you've got the rest of these Lost Boys, especially Wendy, who has her brother with her now that they've been reunited, and he's trying to low-key, and he's not very effective at doing it, but trying to find a way to maybe rescue his sister now that he knows she's alive and get her away from Boy and get her away from this Prodigy program that, and it's a very interesting interaction that he has with Kirsch, where he's like, Kirsch is like, what are you trying to free her from, and what do you expect to get out of this? Like, she's not technically alive anymore, but she has her, like, what are you expecting to happen here? He's like, she can live for 1,500 years, and he's like, you're not going to do that. So what are you trying to get out of it? It's some really fun, like, interpersonal dynamics that happen here, but man, I really want to show some love to episode 5 in particular on this, because this felt so much like a throwback Alien film in one episode.
It felt like the original Alien in a way,
like
their version of the original Alien.
It was a ton of fun, where it takes place primarily on the ship where the creatures escaped from, to kind of get the backstory of how it got to it crashing and kicking off the events of episode 1. And it's just a phenomenally done episode where you have all of these people. You have a saboteur on the ship. You have, just this really cool story told of how these things break out and take over the ship, and how Morrow gets it to crash land inadvertently into Prodigy territory, but, gets it back to Earth as it's intended to be. And it was just a phenomenally done episode.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting us to go back to the ship, because, we had seen them waking up in the very beginning. We got to see the crash with the xenomorph attacking some of them, and then pretty much the entire crew dying but Morrow. And now we jump back and we got to see it all unfold, and I wasn't expecting it, but it did feel like we just got a mini Alien movie inside really cool. Because that ship definitely has the aesthetic of the original Alien, the look, the feel, the lighting, the colors. We got a bunch of different horror aspects with it, with the little eel slug creatures and the eyeball creature and the xenomorph, and you get a good mix of different type of horror in there. At times the xenomorph was like almost standing a little too human. At times that you could tell, okay, they didn't fully commit, and at other times it was creepy crawling all around, but we got a mini Alien movie inside of this, so that was really fun to see those different characters. We got more of that one creepy guy who's just always standing over the women in the cryosleep and stuff, and we get to see what exactly happened to him, which is very satisfying to see something with a guy who's that creepy, which bravo to the actor for pulling that sleaze bag off. But that was a nice and I hate to see it because someone dies, but that was a nice scene that we got out of that, just because I hated that guy so much.
There's a lot of awful people.
You're such a creep. But you also feel sympathetic because you've got like the captain who's kind of losing control of stuff because there's so much going on with the specimens and the fire that broke out, and you got Morrow threatening to take stuff away, and she has to answer to Mother, and she's got so much going on that she's trying to balance, and the crew's not respecting her outside of that as well. And I felt that it made her end be even more impactful to me, because it's like she tried to do things right, but just everything went wrong and failed, and you got to sit in emotion with her when she saw someone get killed by, I believe it was by the eyeball alien and other stuff inside of her, saw 2 of them die. Like, she was really impacted by their deaths, and you see that she's kind of breaking down, and Morrow being the cyborg and stuff, all right, now I'm taking over the ship. But it was really interesting to be able to go back onto the ship and see it all unfold and stuff. But that was a fantastic episode. You got action, you got horror, you got suspense. Like I said, it felt like their 1 hour version of the first Alien film within this universe. Like, I think that it's not as good. I'm not trying to say it's as good as Alien, because that's a masterpiece to me, like that original. But this was one of the best episodes of the season, just because it gave you that horror, it gave you the alien action, and it just felt like classic Alien.
Yeah, it felt very authentic. It was a nice touch in the middle of a season. Like, a lot of times you see what you like to call a flashback episode, and that's kind of essentially what that was. But it was like you said, it had a lot of the aesthetics of the original Alien film, and it was just so well done. And it was a real highlight for me, because a lot of times when you go back and have those flashback episodes, everybody's kind of like, they're usually like the weaker episodes in a season, where it's just like, we want the backstory, but can you give it to us like while things are moving forward? But this was really well done, and I really did enjoy it. And one of the central themes of this show is there's just not a lot of good people like in this story, because I'm watching it with a couple friends. I want to give a shout out to Bill in particular, who likes to come into our YouTube comments and talk about these episodes and stuff with us, and I've been watching it with him, and we're both kind of in agreement. There's just like one halfway decent person left on this show, really, where a lot of people you're hoping get very satisfying ends, especially like Boy. Like, we're just waiting for Boy to get his comeuppance at some point. But yeah, that episode itself was phenomenal. Episode 6 really kind of launches stuff forward too. Like, you get, what happens with Slightly and his, journey to get this egg out, to get it to Mara to save his family, really comes to a head in this one, where you see more people dying. You see just some real consequences of people's actions carrying a lot of weight in this episode, and very heavy action oriented. Gotta give a special moment to the sheep with the eyeball creature, because good Lord, that is terrifying. And it's funny, but it's terrifying at the same time. But really gruesome, brutal deaths in this episode that carried a lot of weight, especially with one of the synths. Won't spoil it for who hasn't seen it yet. Unfortunately, does meet their demise in a very brutal and gruesome way in this. And then you have the story with, Arthur, just not wanting to wipe the memory of one of the synths and being very anti it, and he gets fired for it. Like, we have to, like, it kind of help pushes the events of the end of this episode here, where he doesn't make it out of his employment there, and they're like, well, you're not going to do what we want, we're going to fire you, you got to get out. Like, a very brutal corporate like a very brutal corporate thing like that happens there, where he's just like, well, disobeyed a direct order, you got to go.
Also relationship wise, because his wife is the scientist doctor right with him, and he refuses, and his wife says, I will do it, and it's okay. There's a little tension there,
a little bit, yeah.
But yeah, you got that relationship drama that happens, because those are probably the two who are trying their best to do good, but he's a little bit more good than she is, because she makes a few decisions, because a lot of it was around Nibs. And in episode 4, Nibs kind of has a breakdown. She says she's pregnant, she's going after Dame, like almost attacking her and stuff. You see something switched off in her mind. And so for 6, they decide that they're going to erase from the tower, from the crash to now. And so you get a really interesting scene between her and Wendy, where Wendy's sitting on the bed talking about her pregnancy, and she's like, what? Yeah. It was right after the crash. What crash? And so she has no idea. So it really sets off an interesting chain of events with Wendy, because now she's questioning a lot of stuff. She's had Kirsch in her ear talking about how synth should be, because Kirsch wants her to be more synth, and while they're trying to get her to stay more human. And there's a really interesting dynamic that's opening up. All right, so how are these Siths and cyborgs and these hybrid humans and stuff, how are they all going to be interacting with the human element, and what's going on at Neverland? And it creates a really interesting dynamic going forward, especially where we leave Wendy, where she's basically writing off humanity, like, maybe we don't need humanity anymore, maybe humanity's the problem. Like, uh-oh, you might have just created something even worse than a xenomorph.
Yeah, that's a turn in and of itself, right? So really interesting dynamics at play here. I want to talk about one of the more absurd scenes from any of the episodes we've gotten so far, and there's this kind of corporate level mediation scene that happens where Boy Cavalier and Yutani show up to a mediation to try to resolve this dispute over who these, who not only the ship, but who these specimens truly belong to. And obviously Boy, being the evil mastermind genius that he both is and thinks he is, makes the argument like, hey, I'm more than willing to give you these things back, but we got to follow protocol here. And there's a mandatory quarantine period. And Yutani's very much like, I know what you're doing. Just I'm willing to accept the risk that it could pose to get these specimens back from you. And there's a very funny, like, outlandish monetary dispute between the two.
And he's got his feet on the table. They're dirty and filthy, no shoes on.
Just absolutely disrespectful. I'm like, can this guy die already? And I'm not like that with many characters, but he has Joffrey from Game of Thrones.
There's going to be cheers when he gets his comeuppance.
Yeah. Just that level of annoyance with the character where you're just like, can this guy die already? And I'm going to feel very satisfied, hopefully, when that happens.
Oh, but there was some brilliance to that, too, because I just had to laugh at what he was doing, because she's like, well, let's do 10 million. And he's like, and I want him now, or 10 billion, and I want him now. It's like, oh, okay, 20. And she comes back, 15 billion. Oh, okay, 25 billion. Like, so I'm going to go over that. And they finally agree on 20. And he's like, okay, and you'll get him back after the 2-week or 6-week quarantine or whatever it was. Yeah. And she's like, no, I want him now, 50. No, I'm good on 20, and you have to wait for the 6. Like, I hate him, but he played that. It was so vicious the way he played her, because he's got a bunch of money, and he gets to keep them for several more weeks and stuff, and just rub that in her face. But that also sets her apart. Like, all right, now it's time to get Morrow. Morrow, do what you need to do to get me this back. And it sets off what could be, we've only got 2 episodes left.
Yeah.
So this really could set off a chain. Like, there's multiple things that set off chain events. You got this with Morrow potentially, he could be heading to the island now. And you got Slightly, who at first he tried to get Hermit to be his kind of human sacrifice, and went off like, why does Wendy get her brother here? But he gets called off on patrol with his former team members and stuff. And so, unfortunately, and this is going to be a big spoiler, we've already done plenty of spoilers, but he lands on Arthur because he's sitting there at the lab, Slightly is, and he's going to go in to try to figure some stuff out. And Arthur shows up because because of him in a scene with Hermit, which they know they're being listened to and they're being recorded. And like, well, here, Wendy's vitals are good, but he's actually typing stuff in the computer to show, and he actually turns off the trackers for all of the Lost Boys and stuff, but it notices that Toodles' tracker has gone offline, and he goes to the lab to check it out. And then, fortunately, Arthur ends up being that kind of scapegoat that gets some stuff happening to him. But I kind of wish it was Hermit in a way instead of Arthur, because I think you could have had a much bigger impact with Wendy, where you left Wendy with this episode, and if it ended up being her brother that had stuff happen to him like this, I think you would have had, I could just picture her commanding like the xenomorph to attack Slightly and end him and stuff like that. And it's very curious to see when you use Arthur for it, if it's going to have a biggest impact as it would have been Herman. And you can go back and review the first 3 that I'm a little annoyed with Herman, because he's had that kind of super survival stuff. Like, he survived 5 times against a xenomorph already, which I almost pretty much beats the record of Ripley and others. Like, he's survived the most of anybody in the Alien universe that I can think of right now, because of how many times he survived a run. And it's like, he survived a little too much, and I think it would have had a big emotional impact. But I'm really curious to see, because not only with using Arthur potentially to get him out, to get the specimens out, you got those little flying bugs are now free. So you have Wendy going off the edge. You have the Lost Boys, like with Nibs, with kind of losing her mind a little bit. You have Morrow and what he's going to do. You have Kirsch and his experiments, and what Boy and Yutani are doing together. You've got a lot of different elements that are really building to potentially a crazy final 2 episodes.
That's what I'm hoping for, because like you said, you've got the last 2 episodes to see where this really jumps off to, and I'm excited to see where they go with it, because I really feel like everything's really pushing forward now. Like, we're getting into some heavy stuff here, and I'm excited to see where they wrap it up. But yeah, like, these last 3 episodes, just so well done, and it really pushes things forward where you're like, okay, now we can start seeing, you're starting to see more people's motives. You're starting to see intentions. Now let's really pay it off with a bang here, and how this is all going to come to a head, because it's getting to that point now. And I think they're doing a good enough job at moving things along in a way that each episode, I love that they leave on the stinger of something crazy to lead into the next episode, on top of just throwing in some awesome music on top of it. I love how I love how every episode ends with one of those. There's a Tool one on there too, like so good, and it's fun stingers to lead into the next week. And this is one that I'm glad we're kind of getting weekly, because I don't know if I'd have the same experience if I could watch all 10 episodes together like that, but going on this weekly journey for this that we've had, and I know we're kind of reviewing them in bunches, but we're watching it weekly as well, and it's just a ton of fun to kind of wait in anticipation to see what they're going to do with this next episode. And it's been a fun ride, and this is something I look forward to watching each and every week, and it's been a fun journey that they've taken us on so far.
It's been better than expected, because it doesn't stick to the traditions of the Alien universe. It's kind of doing its own thing and rewriting a few things, but you're along for that ride. And it did start off a little slowly at the beginning, but these three were a really solid chunk that really moved the story forward, but gave so many points, not only to end the season, but to go forward with, because we got so much drama between all the different groups, and with, these creatures that they're going to have to, at least one of them's going to have to escape and get out in the open, and we'll probably season 2 leave Neverland and go into, bigger parts of the Earth and everything else. But they're really setting up so many different angles that they have a lot of story that they can still tell past the season, which I'm liking. That we're not going to get, at least right now, we got 2 episodes, not going to feel like we're ending with everything buttoned up. We're probably going to have a lot of stuff left open at the end of this, and probably end on a very brutal moment in the final episode that'll leave us wanting and waiting for that. But it's these 3 really solidified this. This is a really solid series that they've done a really good job with, of not only paying tribute and honor to like Aliens and Alien, mostly those 2. Feel a little bit of Romulus, but I mean, it's not exactly what Romulus tried to do, but it's really paying attention to what came before it, but also doing its own thing.
Yeah, and I like that, because that's what you want to see when somebody tries to put their own spin on it. You don't want it to be a carbon copy remake of what you've already seen. They take elements of what made Alien work, and they try to tell their own story with it, and I think they're doing an effective job with it. I don't think it's as close to canon to the Alien films as maybe some people were expecting, even us, maybe with some of the preconceived notions that we had of what this was going to be going in, but it's very, very cool to kind of see them do their own thing with this and see the world that they're building here. And I'm in agreement. I don't think we're going to get everything buttoned up, because truth be told, we're not reviewing next week's episode next week. We're going to wait 2 weeks at least until the season finale drops to kind of give a full recap of those 2 episodes and talk about how we feel about the season as a whole. But I'm in agreement there. I feel like we're going to leave with some very poignant questions on where the series is going for season 2. This feels like it's going to be a multi-seasonal show at this point, which I'm all for if they can continue to marry the quality storytelling with the violent aspects of it and the horror elements that they've done well enough so far that I hope they can carry forward into future seasons. But I'm definitely looking in agreement with you that it's looking like a multi-season show, and I'm here for it. I'm ready for the journey that it's going to take us on.
I'm waiting to see what rock song we get to end the season and see if there's got to be something that just has a good little impact in there.
Has to.
Yeah, because like I said, with 6, you end with the sheep just looking out, and you get Godsmack playing over top of it, and it just fits. It does feel kind of out of left field at first when you first started getting that, because you've got a more orchestral score, and you have more Alien like music from the films and stuff, and then the episode's over once that rock beat hits in. And at first it was like, okay, we're getting rock music, and now it's like, all right, okay, it's over with. I see where we're going. I see what this is doing. All right, I know the episode's over with now once I get that rock song kicking in. But these really just solidified as a solid season so far, and I really hope they nail the landing with it, because they've set up a lot. We're going to see what gets tied up and what gets, kicked forward into another season. But there's still a lot in this universe that they can play with, which makes me excited for more. Like, you don't always get that with a series, that if it's wanting you to revisit or go back or to continue with it. But with 2 episodes left, it's got me wanting to see how they end it, and it's already wanting me to see how they proceed with something new in another season.
Well, yeah, I mean, you know, they're not going to stay isolated to this island that they've been on for the entirety of the show. So you know they're going to branch off into other areas of the planet. So I'm excited to see where that jumps off and springs forward to something hopefully bigger and better in season 2 and beyond. But yeah, you can watch all of the episodes of Alien Earth are available on Hulu and Disney Plus right now. The first 6 episodes are out. We got 2 more to go through. Excited to put the button on the first season here in a couple weeks when the last 2 episodes have dropped and talk about it. And I'm just having a blast with it. Go watch this show. If you're a fan of the Alien films, if you're a fan of, you know, those type of science fiction, adventure, violent, you know, a good combination of those in a story, I think you'll get a lot of enjoyment out of the show for sure. To find all of the episodes of We'll Bring the Popcorn, go to our YouTube page, hit the like and subscription button so you're getting our episodes when they drop each and every Monday. If you're listening to us in the audio room on any of the podcasting platforms that we're on, please don't forget to give us a 5-star review. It really helps elevate the profile of the show. And don't forget to go to willbringthepopcorn.com, where it has all of our archive videos, all of our social media information, as well as our merch store, so you continue to support the show in that way. We cannot thank you enough for your continued support.